Oh, see? You tried. Didn't catch me. I'm ready. Here we go. Push him off. Here we go. Get that guy out of here. Yeah. Clean the deck. Woo!
That's it. Good morning, Timothy, and good morning to everybody tuning into the 264th episode of Japanese Politics One-on-One. It is March the 1st. Happy March and happy spring month, I would say, to everybody watching us and who will be watching us. And thank you very much indeed for being here. This is the time when we talk about Japanese politics and the events that happened here during the past 1 week with Timothy Langley, the CEO of Langley Squire, the oldest standing and most successful government relations agency here in Tokyo. So remember that, and if you have friends and colleagues or family members that need advice about government relations, please talk with Timothy. Timothy, over to you. What are we going to hear about this morning today?
I don't know, Maya. There's always such a challenge of trying to find things to talk about in Japanese politics. It has just been amazing. And then last night, yesterday, the attack from Israel and the United States on Iran really changes the dynamics of what's going on. But today I'm reporting from Katsuyama, Maya. I spent the day on the water yesterday. I'm in port now and we'll take off a bit after this briefing. So I'm not quite in my sailing gear. But last night, it was a bit of a night sail. And I don't know if you know this, but 6 planets were in a direct alignment last night. It was just amazing. That doesn't happen very often. You might get one or two, maybe 3 planets in alignment, but there were 6 of them in alignment. They were beautiful. They were uh, very, very prominent. You could see what it was. But it tells you that there's a lot going on, celestially, but there's a lot going on here politically too. And it's not just Japan. We focus on Japan and Japan politics and what it means for people that are doing business here. But there's so much going on now, just geopolitically, that has that impact because of the oil and the prices and what's going on with Miss Takaichi. But there's an alignment that's happening. It's going on fast. The diet is in session. The budget hearings start tomorrow, Monday. They will go until March 13th. And it's really a very tight itinerary for the prime minister, for the budget, for the diet, and for what it propels Japan to be in the near term. And now we've got this this very, very serious action that's going on in the Middle East. And if it comes to Japan, we're going to know that within the next couple of days. So today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to frame my discussion, my briefing into 3 concentric circles. What's going on in the Middle East and what it means for Japan, and the yen and the Bank of Japan and the Prime Minister's use of fiscal responsibility, how she's going to pursue that and how she makes that make sense. And then how a supermajority in the government exercises power under Ms. Takaichi. Those are the 3 things that I'll talk about. I'll try and finish it up in 35 minutes, and then we can get into the real bones and talk about the Q&A. And by the way, I think people already know this. We have a Q&A not because I know all the answers. We have a huge audience of really well-practiced and experienced Japan hands. So that intelligence all comes together through the questions and some of the comments that you provide. So please don't hesitate. For those of you who are new to the program, welcome. We do it every Sunday. And it's becoming, Maya, it's just becoming more and more important to be up to date on a weekly basis on what's going on in Japanese politics. Happy March. We made it through another month.
You
So
did.
back to you, Maya. Yes, barely.
Barely. Thank you. Well, before we go into the details of the briefing today, I would like to do some housekeeping. Please, if you find these briefings interesting and also informative, helpful, do not hesitate to share them with colleagues and friends as well who are interested in Japan, who live here but haven't heard of them, and also maybe family members as well, because this is the only briefing that we do regularly and basically is available on a regular weekly basis following the events in Japanese politics. I apologize for the slight echo on my side. We have a slightly different setting, technical setting today. So
Mhm.
I hope that the echo is not disturbing. In any event, Timothy is going to be the main person talking again today. So hopefully this echo will not bother you too much. And another thing is that thank you to everybody who came to the movie night last week. We watched Kokuho. It was a beautifully made movie. It is a beautifully made movie. And remember that the next movie night is going to be on the last Tuesday of March. And Timothy, it is over to you now.
Great. Thank you very much, Maya. Let's start with the Middle East. So I got a lot of calls yesterday, even as I was pulling into port and getting prepared to have some dinner on board with my friends. Um, it is not quite World War III. There's a lot of excitement going on there. It has a potential of being a volatile trigger for more contagion. We're going to be watching that, but the Strait of Hormuz is a critical artery. Roughly 90% of Japan's oil imports pass through that narrow waterway. And not only just oil, but LNG. So Japan's energy mix is predominantly oil and LNG. So a lot of LNG comes through the strait as well. So if there's going to be more and more action that's exercised through that region and shipments stall, you'll notice it pretty quickly with regard to oil, but LNG will be just a tiny bit after that. Japan has a 200-day stockpile of oil and LNG for energy use, but still, even though you have these private stockpiles and the government is prepared for some sort of contingency, it still will impact business and the yen. So we need to watch that very closely. So the yen closed out at 155 on Friday, and it had been vacillating a little bit. It strengthened throughout the week to 152, and in this last week, please remember that the yen is kind of a thermometer read of what's going on in the economy, and what was going on in the economy was pretty much dominated by diet hearings. So the prime minister opened the diet 2 weeks ago, and this last week there was a Q&A session. So all of the opposition parties has an opportunity to question the prime minister. What are you going to be doing in this diet session? There's a constitutionally mandated 150-day diet session that just started. Her cabinet stayed in mass. She didn't make any changes to the cabinet. And when you do this Q&A with the prime minister, depending on what your strength is in the lower house, you get to ask questions to the prime minister. The LDP has maybe 75% of the lower house seats. So they used some of their time, but most of it they just relinquished. And they gave it to the constitution to the opposition party. But Ishin said, we won't be wasting time, not wasting time, but we understand that there's a collapse, there's a compression of time, so we're going to forego our questioning. So we'll pass it to somebody else. And the Constitutional Democratic Party and the Komeito alignment, known as the Central, what's it called? The Constitution, help me out there, Maya. What's Chudo? Central, no,
Yes,
the
sorry.
Chudo in English. I forget what the name is for the Chudo. Anyway, it's the amalgamation of the Komeito and the Constitutional Democratic
Oh,
Party.
that is well, the CRA, the Reform
You're
RC,
doing it too. So, isn't this the problem though? They pulled this
the
thing together, and it was.
Central Reformist, what was association? CRA. Forgive me.
See,
Yes.
but this is a perfect example. They threw this thing together, not thinking that the prime minister would call a snap election. We don't even have time to remember who they are or who their leaders are. The Constitutional Democratic Party went and they formed this union. They made a deal with Komeito to do this. In order to do this, they pushed the Komeito candidates in the lower house in front of the Constitutional Democratic Party. all of the Komeito candidates won, and the Constitutional Democratic Party went from 167 to like 45 seats. Can you even imagine that? Boom! And so they formed a new party, Chudo, but it kind of works only in the lower house. In the upper house, it's still Komeito and the Constitutional Democratic Party. They quite haven't pulled that together. But anyway, that's drifting beyond what I want to talk about, the yen and what's going on with that. But most of the eyes have been watching what's going on inside the Diet and the questioning and how the prime minister answers the questions. She had her entire cabinet on board in the huge, the largest room in the parliament, the budget committee room, to take these questions. And it was for 7 hours that they do this. They had to even pass a special bill that the prime minister could be drinking water from a seated position while she's going through this. So there's a lot of exposition of what's in store for Japan under the Takaichi leadership, what's going to happen with the consumption tax, what's going to happen, how are we going to fill that hole of 5 trillion yen for 2 years when you drop the consumption tax from 8% to zero. And there's a lot of other things that are going on with that too. So, for example, for food, does that include food that's eaten in restaurants? And so there's a big debate going on now. No, it's just the food that you buy at the grocery store and for daily necessities. And if you're going out and you're having dinner there, it's not going to count. So there's a lot of that that's going on. But the prime minister does need to fill, and it really falls on the shoulders of the finance minister to figure out how to um, how to fill that 5 trillion yen hole for 2 years. Don't excite the bond markets while doing it. Keep the yen steady and don't issue new debt. So it's a real conundrum. And with what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz and in that region, this this could begin to impact not just the rate of inflation, which is steady now. It's about 1.8. It's the rate of inflation. I mean, there are numbers and then there are numbers, but it was reported to be about 1.8%. That's below 2%, the target that the Bank of Japan has been aiming at for 5 or 6 years, and just hasn't been able to hit it. So that's some of the good news, but the currency markets are watching very carefully. So my advice to people in the audience is, get into a habit of watching what the yen is doing. On Friday, it closed at 155. Look at what it does on Monday. Monday's going to be a very active day, and throughout this week, it's going to be very active. What have we got going is the prime minister she came in as being a fiscal responsible conservative. She's going to be propelling the economy forward. She is an accolade of Prime Minister Abe, the three arrows. She will not do the three arrows, but she will follow something along the same lines. She's dynamic and she's carving out a historical position for herself. So many of the things that she's already pursuing are historical in nature. She's the first woman prime minister. This budget hearing, she wants to compress the budget hearing in the lower house to 58 hours. She wants to pass it up to the upper house by March 13th. Today is in 13 days. She wants to do that. And there's only so much. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If they are in discussion for 7 hours, how do you get 58 hours crammed into that? This is the tightest time in Japanese history to be debating the budget. The next closest was Prime Minister Abe with 66 hours in a budget committee. This is really compressed. And then to pass it to the upper house with 2 weeks to pass it, it's unprecedented. But she's pointed her finger, she's wagged it to everybody in the parliament. I want to pass the budget in the lower house by March 13th, and she'll probably be able to do that. And I want the budget to be passed on schedule by April 1st. It's a couple of rabbits being pulled out of the bag. First of all, having the budget passed by April 13th requires some acceptance of the budget by the opposition parties. And the opposition parties have already said, you know, if you don't make it by April 1st, there's going to be a shortfall. So why don't you issue a supplemental budget, because we're the opposition party and we think that you should do that. And it's kind of like, why are you making more, why are you putting more burden on us? So you want us to finalize, or we want to finalize the budget in a constricted time frame, and you're insisting that we have a supplemental budget just in case, and maybe if we don't have it, then you should. So it's a little bit of crossing the swords, but I think, you know, it'll be passed up to the upper house. The LDP doesn't have a majority in the upper house. Even with Ishin, it's a little bit skinny. So it needs to be a little bit, it doesn't want, I mean, Prime Minister doesn't want to be perceived as just being muscular. She's going to exercise her supermajority. She's going to be a dictator. These kinds of criticisms will come up naturally anyway. So you need to tap down the kind of ammunition that you feed to the opposition. And she's already said, you know, she would include some people, opposition members, into committee chairs. The LDP holds all the committee chairs. And usually when you have the committee chair that's in the leadership position, the vice chair is in the opposition. So they're sitting there, they're participating in all of the deliberations as well. But the chair is the one that really calls the shots, calls the schedule, and can conclude discussions or push discussions in another way. And that's all being dominated by the LDP. In any event, she is moving forward, kind of making this new cloth from what has been given to her as pretty much of a mandate. She's carving out what she's going to be doing. And I think the public will give her a lot of leeway. But she's got two appointments. She met with the Bank of Japan chairman, Mr. Ueda, a week ago tomorrow. So we've already reported on that. It was actually 2 weeks ago. And there are two appointments that are coming up, key individuals who report to the Chairman Ueda. He's actually in position for another couple of years, and that appointment is not on her schedule. But the two lieutenants that he has are on her schedule, and who she selected really signal where she's going to be going with the economy. And it looks like she's, as we've predicted, and as she's been very vocal about, you know, conservative expansion. So that means a strong yen and expansion internally, and to move the economy forward. It's a hard thing to do, especially with this consumption tax promise that was kind of sprung on her. The LDP doesn't like it, doesn't want to do it, but since the opposition party said, you know, vote for us because that's what we're going to talk about, that's what we're going to insist upon, the LDP had to absorb it too. So it really makes a difference who the lieutenants are running the Bank of Japan. It's supposed to be a separate entity, but it's supposed to be a separate entity like NHK is not the mouthpiece of the government. So there's a lot of that going on. And also, there is a bit of a scandal that came on. I'd like to touch upon it because how it was handled really tells us a lot about her administration, about how the press is going to be treating her. So you might remember Mr. Ishiba when the election, he's called for a snap election, and there were 13 new members who were elected as a consequence of that, and he gave each of them Sammayan as a gift. No, I think it was Jumayan as a gift. 13 individuals, and it created a huge brouhaha. He's trying to bribe people. He's trying to bring them. He doesn't have a faction anymore, but he's trying to get these new members to fall in love with him by giving them gifts. A big deal. The prime minister just this last week gave a similar gift, Sammayan, not as much as what Ishiba did. He gave 10. She gave 3. He gave it to 13 people. She gave it to 315 people. She gave that gift to everybody in the LDP who won. 316 people won, her included. So she didn't give herself a gift, but she gave this gift to everybody else. And so the press picked up on that, and it looks like, you know, the contrast, and that's a lot of money, the prime minister from her own pocket, Um, so why is the press kind of giving her a pass? And they did. They talked about it for a day, but it didn't come up in the budget hearings in a very volatile way, and it kind of just slid away. And I've got to tell you, I worked in the parliament. One of the duties that I had on a pretty regular basis was to have one of these dollies with gifts that my member, through me, distributed to other members of the parliament, gift giving and cookies and flowers, that kind of thing. It goes on. It's a part of the decorum there. So the fact that she gave these people a gift for winning their election and welcoming them back into the LDP doesn't strike me, and apparently doesn't strike too many other people as too bad. Even in this economy, a lot of people say that's a lot of money, and she's just a rich person that's running politics. But I think it was covered up. It wasn't covered up. It was dealt with and taken care of, and it's people aren't talking about it anymore. So I think that that tells you a couple of things. It tells you, one, that the press is in her court and is dealing with her a little bit gently, as they should. She's got a supermajority, and she can extract a vengeance on you if you're not pulling the line, if you're talking out of shop. So the LDP is becoming a little bit more um, consistent together. The other thing that's come up over this last week is, once again, the emergence of the factions. Everybody who had a faction, Mr. Motegi, Mr. Hayashi didn't have his own faction, but he's having discussions. Mr. Koizumi, Minister of Defense right now, ultimately he will be prime minister, so he's beginning to have his group. Um, uh, um, Kobayashi, a couple of the main figures are now having these groups, the group dynamics, and I think it's kind of, I mean, for most of the people who are familiar with the long flow and ebb of Japanese politics, the factions play a really central role. And it's just human nature to want to collect with people, especially when you weld that kind of political power, how to get things done, how to act in concert with people who are familiar to you, and how to kind of accumulate power so you can get things done. Your your guys can have committee chairs or maybe even a cabinet position. And I think you're seeing, especially with the supermajority, you're going to see this kind of gravitational pull to reassert the factions. I think it's inevitable that we're going to be going down that path. Um, but um, besides that, we've got the March 13th deadline and the April 1st deadline. And right in between there, the prime minister is going to be visiting Washington, D.C., 2 days in Washington, D.C. This is a big deal for Japan. It's a big deal for the United States. Probably a bigger deal for Japan, obviously. But there's a lot going on there. And also, she's been scheduled to visit with the South Korean president as well. And it's her turn to travel there. He was here a month ago, and they've initiated a kind of shuttle diplomacy. They've made promises to each other on about a monthly or bi-monthly basis. They will be talking with each other. And this relationship between Japan and South Korea, it's fraught with a lot of emotion, a lot of historical underpinnings, but it's so key that the two countries work well together. And so that you've got the United States, Japan, and South Korea, particularly in this very volatile time frame. So it's a busy, busy month for her. And just after the prime minister meets with Donald Trump, probably within 2 weeks of that, he travels to China. So, gosh, there's just so much going on there. In the meantime, there are military drills that are going on in the Philippines that engage the United States, Japan Self-Defense Forces, the Philippines, and several of the like-minded countries as observers, not so much as participants. But they're doing naval drills now, very active naval drills. It just kicked off this week. It's continuing right now. So it's interesting that what's happened in Iran falls at a time when they're having these drills here. The pace and the action from China with regard to overflights and breaching Japan's sovereignty has really been toned down. Nothing from North Korea, although that remains a flashpoint, something that we're walking very, very carefully. But diplomacy and deterrence continue to kind of push this forward so that maybe we'll be lucky and what's going on in Iran will be contained, although Iran has fired missiles at other countries in the region, and that is just such a volatile mix. So we have to watch that very carefully. The Japanese forces participating in these drills and also arming to the teeth the islands that surround Japan and between Japan and Taiwan, Japan and China. That process continues on. And so the profile of the defense minister, Mr. Koizumi, continues to rise incrementally. He spent time talking with the prime minister just this week about what his defense department is doing and the drills in the Philippines. But yeah, he's being tuned up really well to be a significant political figure the next time it goes around for seeing who's going to be prime minister. A lot of the other people who were contenders then, I think they're either in the cabinet or they've been pushed up. But the difference between Ishiba and Takaichi cannot be overemphasized. I think at the low point with Mr. Ishiba, he was in office for just a little bit more than a year. You could say he was in office for a year. He took the popularity of the LDP and the prime minister down to around 11%, and she's sitting at around 48% for the LDP. So it's maybe it's a little bit early to tell. She's been in office now for almost 4 months, but I think the population likes it. They like her reaction to China. They like her stance. They appreciate the fact that she's working on bringing the consumption tax down. The inflation seems to be tapped down a little bit. So there's a lot of hope and just anticipation towards the economy, but also towards business in general. But having a supermajority in the parliament gives you the opportunity to breathe, to kind of exercise that by doing some things. And we've already kind of noted that she's doing things in a historic way. I think she's going to take a page from Donald Trump's book and just be bold and make decisive action. And I think decisive action and boldness has its own attraction. Sometimes you hit it, sometimes you miss it. But Japan has got to come out of the doldrums that it has been in for the last 20 years. So over the next couple of days, please continue to watch the yen and watch what's going on in the Middle East. If they close down the Strait of Hormuz, Japan will feel that very directly. The economy of Japan is based on free and frequent trade, particularly maritime trade. It's an island nation, as everybody knows. Its bread and butter is on trade and investment. The economy is based on other levers of the economy, but we're in a very delicate stage right now, and Japan is in a particularly delicate geopolitical position, just geographically. So watch the yen, watch oil, watch what happens on March 13th. Does the lower house pass it to the upper house? I think they will. Watch what happens on the 19th. This pomp and circumstance of the prime minister going to Washington, D.C. I think we're all going to be surprised and pleased with her performance. She wagged her finger at Akazawa. She said, don't embarrass me in Washington, D.C. You've got this $550 billion investment, and we've identified 3 projects that Japan is going to be investing in, and the United States gets the lion's share of the profit, but we get the kind of spillover effects. We cut that deal, but when I'm in Washington, D.C., I have to come home with a win. I'm passing the budget to the lower house on the 13th, and I go to Washington, D.C. I'm riding high. I want to come back from even there, having a victory with President Trump, and then we move on to, I don't know, I think she probably needs to visit South Korea before she visits the United States. That I don't have a date for that yet, but it's going to happen. And this election delivered leverage for her and for the LDP. So I think you're going to find in execution, the LDP and this prime minister will be aggressive and bold, and we have to get through the budget hearing in 2 weeks. And once the budget gets through April 1st, that's when a lot of the action on policies, on bills, on leverage really comes to the fore, and we can see it, we can taste it. We'll be reporting that to you as the update goes every week when we report to you. So I'd like to wrap it up here and go into the Q&A where all the heat and light is produced. And thank you everybody for participating. Thank you for your questions and your comments, and thanks for supporting the program. Maya?
Yes, thank you, Timothy, for that. And well, we are moving to the Q&A. Before that, again, if you have watched us, if you're watching us, let us know that you have been here by hitting like or follow or subscribe. Also, please help us spread the word about these briefings by sharing them with friends and colleagues or on your social media as well. Because, again, we have been running them for over 5 years now, and we don't charge for them. We also appreciate you being here, and we appreciate your time and your help and support. So thank you also for your questions and comments for the Q&A session. I want to start with a couple of questions and comments that came during the week, Timothy. And the first one
Okay.
is from, okay, we've got Nicholas Hughes. And I think that you
Hi,
touched
Nick.
upon it a little bit, but yes, if you can just probably, give another reply to it. What is your what are your thoughts on the impact of the possible closure of the Strait of Hormuz? Could Japan, or how is it going to affect Japan economically and diplomatically?
Well, I think it's the centrifugal force of that just brings more and more people closer to the United States. I mean, it's going to be a polarizing effect. If Japan, so Japan gets a lot of their LNG, not a predominant amount, but they get some of it from Sakhalin 2 in Hokkaido. But the majority of it comes through the Strait of Hormuz, and almost 90% of the oil comes through there. Which, once again, you have to. I mean, what happened with Venezuela and the United States acting on that? And Venezuela's got the largest oil reserves of anybody in the world. I thought it was Saudi Arabia, and it's not. It's Venezuela, and Venezuela has good oil. It's a very productive oil that they have there. So it could be that the United States would supplement um, uh, the supply or the diminishment of supply. LNG could be supplied by the United States as well, but it's um, yeah, the United States has its own issues too, and their economy. But there's a lot of tit for tat going on, and I think diplomatically, the United States and Japan are close. And something like this, some sort of crisis like this, with a leader like Takaichi, could draw the United States and Japan even into a closer kind of um, joint relationship. But then, if this continues and contagion happens, being affiliated closely with the United States brings you into conflict and as a target too. So as this kind of develops, we've been following Japan really rushing hard into the development of weapons, lethal weapons for uh, national consumption, but also for export. So there's a lot going on there.
Right. And Hiroko-san, she writes in Clubhouse about this topic as well. She says Iran retaliated by striking the U.S. military assets across the Gulf region. It's not likely, but U.S. has a base in Okinawa, which could be the next target, especially if Takaichi is seeking stronger alliances with the U.S.
Yes,
Um,
it's yeah, and the attack would probably not come from Iran. It would come from one of its satellite allies, maybe North Korea.
okay, right. So, moving on to the next question. Once again, it came during the week. So the question is from Tim Kerr, and it is Western media often describe the LDP as a conservative party and characterize Prime Minister Takaichi as very conservative. As
Yes.
I understand it, the LDP is not a monolithic ideological bloc. Could you explain how the different factions or groupings within the LDP are structured and how they differ from one another? And how might or would they try to derail Prime Minister Takaichi's goals?
Who's this question from?
Tim Kerr.
Okay. I don't know how long Tim has been watching the program, um, but just beginning to address that would take, 20 or 30 minutes. The dynamics of what the LDP is and what's the aftermath of the different factions. But I can say that it's not a good time to be opposed to the prime minister. And she is not afraid to tell people, that she has been displeased by them. And together with displeasure, even if you're in the same party, there comes retribution, and nobody wants that. So I think people will even, I mean, if you live in Japan, you understand, not quite passive resistance, but going with the flow and looking for an opportunity to maybe exercise a little bit of your independence from time to time. But my God, this is your breadbasket. You have your constituents to respond to. So you don't want to be on the other side of the prime minister if you're in the same party. So there is a band there, but yes, we deal with this all the time, and people have shortcut descriptions for the prime minister and for the LDP, but not here on our program, not with our audience. People know the textured difference between being a fiscal conservative and being an Abe accolade or towing the line of Mr. Aso Taro and doing exactly what he wants to do. There is a little bit of that, but she owes her premiership to him basically. So her cabinet is peppered with people that are very familiar and very strong with the Aso faction or in the Aso faction. But it is a dynamic. But she is asserting her control over it. It does kind of irk Taro Aso. There was an incident we talked about where he rushed to the Kante to wag his finger at her, and why didn't you consult with me? And you made this decision, right? So there's a little bit of that. But gosh, I mean, what a breath of fresh air for Japanese politics. We never had this with Suga or with Kishida or with Ishiba. This is something dynamically different.
Right, it is indeed. And so we move on to the next questions that came early this morning, again from Byron. And I think that you touched upon the
Shocking.
first of them, but yes, but maybe we can go over them again. Could you explain how time is allocated for the questions sessions in the period up to March 31st in the diet?
Sure. Is there a part B to that? I guess there is.
There is, yes. Last
Okay.
week, the leaders of political Last week, the leaders of political parties, including Mr. Tamaki of the Democratic Party for the People, questioned the Prime Minister in the lower house and on Friday in the Budget Committee of the lower house. When does the action move to the upper house and the Budget Committee of the upper house?
Good.
All right, and when does Finance Minister Katayama answer budget-related questions? Do the Ministry of Finance bureaucrat officials also verbally answer parliamentary questions? After all, they created the budget.
Hmm.
Yes.
Well, I don't know how to address those. Let's go with the first point about how are the questions distributed, the timing of questions distributed. So, depending on what your seat, how many seats you have in the diet, determines how much time you get for questioning. And in the questioning that happened this last week, the LDP, as the largest holder of seats in the lower house, they get the lion's share of questioning. It sounds somewhat counterintuitive. They get to question their prime minister. Yes, she's the LDP president and she's the prime minister. And you would think that she's just being questioned by her own group. They're easy softball questions, and that's the case. They have to run out the clock, though. I mean, for 7 hours, the LDP took 2 hours and gave 5 hours to the opposition. And the opposition didn't include Mr. Tamaki to a large degree, although his seats would require him to have a certain amount of time. But all of it was dedicated to the Chudo, the new party
The
that's an amalgamation. Centrist.
Centrist Reform Alliance.
Oh my God, the Centrist Reform Alliance. Let's see how long that one goes. I don't think
Mhm.
it's got good legs on it. But in any event, they have a new leader. He's trying. Did you want to say something?
I wanted to add here that Manabe-san wrote that basically the CDP and Kumeito still remain separate parties in local
In
assemblies.
yes, and in the
Local
upper
assembly,
house.
right? And in the upper house as well. So, well, there is a question from Manabe-san here as well. He says, what does Mr. Edano mean when he says he will continue his political activities until the unified local elections? But maybe you can address it after answering
The
Byron's
six
question.
questions from Byron.
Yes, almost there. Yeah.
Okay, so there's usually a distribution depending on the opposition party's strength, but they collapse that. Everybody and the prime minister and her lieutenants have sought, look, we only have so much time. Would you kind of relinquish your questioning so that we can focus on so we can compress things? And most of them agreed to that. So that's once again, if you've got the opposition parties that agrees with the LDP to do that, if you're in the LDP, you don't want to piss off your leader by doing something off color. So that refers back to the earlier question. You know, even though it's a spectrum, what happens to people who want to distinguish themselves as an opposition to the prime minister, even though they're in their own party? But to answer the question more specifically, 5 hours was given to the centrist Reform Party. Okay, the Chudo. Let's call it Chudo because that's what it is in Japanese. Um, and they took the lion's share of the briefing or of the questioning. And with regard to who's sitting there, her entire cabinet was there. So whatever the questioning was, they would usually direct the question to, and I would like to direct my question to the foreign minister. And what is your position and how are you going to do? So sometimes the prime minister would raise her hand and she would take the question. But usually it's directed at people in the cabinet and they all showed up for this questioning. That was 7 hours over for 2 days. So it ended on Friday, and then Friday began the budget committee hearings. The lower house has prominence during the first slate. So the prime minister has said until the 13th. So the budget committee is alive every day, 7 hours a day until the 13th. You add all of that up together, it gets to about 58 hours. They pass their portion of the budget to the upper house, and they don't sit back and smoke cigars and wait for them to pass it by April 1st because they're still in communications, but they're on the separate side of the building. The upper house members can't just waltz into the lower house. You've got a lapel badge. If you're in the upper house, it's black felt. If you're in the lower house, it's a kind of red felt. And you can't be a lower house member and just walk across the central pyramid, where that dominant central facade of the diet. You can't just walk across there as if you're a lower house. That belongs to the upper house. So the budget committee, they have their own budget committee hearing as well, but it's separate from the lower house. So a lot of the focus goes on there. But everybody knows the budget committee hearing the budget committee in the lower house consists of 50 people. The lower house has more people, has almost three times more people than the upper house. And the upper house, their budget committee here members will be smaller, but they have the same amount of time to pass the budget. So the lower house has 2 weeks, the upper house has a little bit more than 2 weeks, and they take what the lower house has given them, and maybe there's parts of it that they don't like, that they want to change. There are people there, the texture and the tenor and the personalities are very distinctly different from the lower house to the upper house. The upper house is 6-year terms, so they can sit back and put their feet up on the table. They've got 6 years. They don't have to worry about the prime minister closing down the house or the ramshackle, fisticuffs that are going on in the lower house. So it colors how they deal with things, how they deal with the budget, and how they deal with crisis. So they have the same amount of time there, and we will be following that when it becomes their turn. But right now, it's the lower house, and it's somewhat mirrored in the upper house. And I hope that's responsive. And I'm not sure if I've covered all the Byron questions of mine.
No, not all of them. Do the Ministry of Finance bureaucrat officials
Yes.
so verbally answer parliamentary questions after all they, because after all they created the budget?
No, I think this is just for the hot seat for the prime minister and for the ministers. This is their time to shine. So they're boning up on it, and they have to handle that. When it comes later, after the budget's been passed, and then we're moving into after April 1st and the policy, then many times the bureaucrats are called on to question if there's something that is particularly within their area of expertise.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. And now back to Manabe-san's question before we move on to Corey Jones's questions. So Manabe-san's question is, what does Mr. Edano mean when he says he will continue his political activities until the unified local elections? Can you just throw some light
I,
on this, or?
well, I mean, put yourself in his position, right? What is he going to do? Look at the number of people, the titans of Japan's political economy that lost their seats just in this last election. Ichiro Ozawa, for example, and a couple of other big heavyweights lost their election. Mr. Edano, yes, he's not high on the horse. He wants to be relevant, and he wants to tell people, I'm here. I'm going to continue representing my client, my constituents, and I'm going to challenge the prime minister when it benefits my party or when it benefits me. He just doesn't want to go away. But it's happening with a lot of people. I mean, a supermajority, and the way it was handled, and what happened with the Constitutional Democratic Party and Mr. Noda, and just what a mess. And the dynamics are just really, really startlingly different from what we had anticipated in December.
Right, because there isn't much hope in keeping that alliance together, right? I mean, they totally, how can I put it, confused their voter bases. So
Yeah,
one of the reasons probably they lost so many seats was that the voters really didn't know what to do and who to vote
yeah,
for at the end of the day.
exactly.
And it was seen also as a cheap move towards trying to secure more seats, while they were criticizing LDP for doing the same thing, the thing they were
Yeah.
doing, right? Which was kind of not really well thought
Well,
out move.
things don't happen very quickly or briskly here in Japan. And especially when it comes to voting, people vote for a lot of different spiritual and business related reasons. But switching your vote or switching your party affiliation, that takes a little bit more time. You have to be educated, you have to be compelled, you have to be enthusiastic. And those components were totally missing. They were caught totally off guard. And it happened. Yes, it didn't happen in the Ishiba administration. It only happened in the Takaichi administration. And look how rapidly that happened. So there's a lot to look forward to. I'm enthusiastic and leaning positive towards more. It's going to be difficult, but I think it's not going to be like the Abe administration, which was always fraught with a lot of controversy and the scandal in Osaka, and he was just always dogged and chased. And it turned out that the Unification Church was the total downfall, and resulted in his assassination as well, and the collapse of all of the factions. But we're in a completely different realm right now, and I hope everybody that's on the channel appreciates and accepts that. It's this is something we have to do this briefing every week now. I mean, it's a compelling imperative for us. Things are moving so rapidly and so significantly. And once again,
Right.
thank you,
But
everybody.
yeah, thank you, everybody, indeed. But I still believe that there are a lot of questions because when there is so much power concentrated in one political party, inevitably people start worrying about the responsibility that comes with that power and whether that
Overreach.
responsibility. Yes, indeed. And hopefully that is not going to happen because the Japanese, once again, I move into the peer pressure and also the Confucianist values here in Japan, which very few people actually talk about, how big influence they have, an influence they have on everything that happens in Japan, business, politics, and everywhere. So hopefully, that overreach will not happen, but inevitably people start asking questions, right? And
Well,
having concerns about it.
Maya, if you want dramatic results, you have to take dramatic action. And I think there are enough people in the LDP that are saying, finally, it's our time. Finally, we can do something. And so I think being hopeful that it doesn't happen. I think you're going to find dramatic action being taken across the board. And in the end, maybe Japan that pulls Japan out. But yeah, it's like when you have such velocity, mistakes are made, right? And people um, maybe they act on impulse, or they exercise what they think is within their parameters, and it turns out that it's not. So there's a lot to be just to look forward to. And yes, there'll be some mistakes, but I think you're going to see a pretty swift action on a lot of fronts.
Well, absolutely. I agree with you. The question is how big the mistakes are going to be and how big the impact will be, right? Because at the end of the day, that is what everybody's concerned about, right?
So here's a point. Just reflect on what happened with the gifts that Takaichi gave to 315
Mhm.
members, right? It was kind of just not a big deal. So
Indeed.
that indicates that either the press is really enamored with her, or she has a grip on them, and the bad press is not going to be overemphasized, and maybe we're not going to find out too much about the mistakes and just about the victories. So and that was one of the problems with the LDP and under the Abe administration, that he constricted uh, the press and he dominated it and he punished people who spoke out of line. And yeah, I think there's probably going to be a little bit of that too.
Mm. Well, thank you for that. And also, I have a question about the factions, but I want to read out Corey's question about that before I ask mine. So he writes, with factional influence weakened after recent internal reforms, where does real power inside the LDP now reside? The Kante, or policy tribes, or informal networks?
Oh, the policy tribes, it's pretty standard. The policy tribes, the Zokugin, they always have a value and they always produce, good insight and a power base. Um, but I think and it's been a march for a long time to take the power away from the bureaucrats. This was in the 80s, and Bill Clinton and the bureaucrats, and before that, the bureaucrats held tremendous power, and they were pretty much dictating and guiding the Japanese economy. And under the leadership of Mr. Ozawa, um, that shift began to turn over towards the parliamentarians and the politicians. Um, and so when you're dealing in this business like I am, the focus became more on parliament, the individuals in the parliament, the diet members, not so much on the bureaucrats. It's a different way to approach them. It's a different way to deal with them. But over the last maybe 15 or 20 years, it's the parliamentarians that wield the power. They have name recognition. They can get elected and have a cabinet seat. That shift has begun now more towards the Conte. They built a brand new Conte. It's been in existence now for what, 12 years, 15 years? Um, and it's a huge edifice, but it replaced just a three-story building, a brick building, which was the Conte, the residence of the prime minister. That's not what it is anymore. 5 floors underneath, uh, 4 floors above ground, about 500 employees. So that power is being collected within the Conte, and I think that is the pace of how it's going to be. She's a prime minister. She's not a president. She's not a king. It is a parliamentary democracy, but I think that power is beginning to be concentrated. And the creation of the digital agency also supports that. That these decisions um, need to be made by the Conte, and we need to have accurate, immediate access, and that can only be done if everybody is integrated into the same digital network, which is why we came up with the digital agency idea in the first place. So yes, it begins to replicate itself. I hope that's responsive.
I hope so too, but I also believe that since Mr. Cage is all about long-term objectives and policies, right? Maybe there will be some synergy there between her and Kasumi Gaseki, between Kante, the Kante and Kasumi Gaseki, because I think that politicians tried and they wanted to take away power from Kasumi Gaseki because they wanted short-term results,
Right.
right? I mean, we saw that. And now with her, basically, once again talking about long-term fiscal policies and long-term industrial policies and this and that, maybe there will be some kind of different dynamic between Kasumi Giseki and Kante, at least for as long as she is in power. And what I hear from people in Kasumi Giseki is that she does have a very good reputation among the bureaucrats there. So it's not like with some other politicians, like let's say Mr. Kishida, for example, or even with Koizumi-san, right? So
Hmm. Yeah,
I think
that's right.
yes, yeah. So maybe there will be a different dynamic there as well, at least for the next couple of years or several years. But we'll have to see. Right. And then I have a question to you actually before we move once again back to external politics. Um, do you think that with the factions, with their comeback, because we know that it's human nature, it's also how Japanese politics has been done for decades, if not just for years, um,
Right.
are the new formations within the LDP are going to follow the, let's say, the lines of those factions that disappeared? Or are they going to be something new in
I think
nature?
I think they're going to do both.
Hmm.
It's just natural to have a grouping of people who have some sort of an affinity, either policy wise or generational or geographically, something like that. And when you do that, you begin to realize through exercising that cohesion that you have power. And so you do things that help establish that power base and increase it. And that's where you get into trouble by cutting corners and doing things so that you can increase quicker and a little bit more robustly and attract more people. And that's what happened with the Abe faction. They were spitting out money to bring people into the fold. So you were pretty much guaranteed to win your next election if you belonged to the Abe faction because they handled so much of the election campaign financing and they were generating a lot of money too. They became the largest faction, twice as large as the second largest faction. So they picked prime ministers for decades. If you didn't have the blessing of the leader of the Abe faction or whatever the faction, it could have been the Mori faction or the Fukuda faction. It's all the same, generational uh, uh, DNA, but it ends up as the Abe faction. But yeah, I think it will continue like that. But I think the bad things like the campaign financing and the people are just watching it too closely now. So it'll evolve a little bit, but it'll also be similarly personality driven. So the leader will be the top guy. Everybody will like Mr. Hayashi. Everybody will like Mr. Kobayashi. Everybody will like Mr. Motegi, and they will be the gel that brings it together. And I think that's just a part of the system here.
Right. We have a comment from Manabe-san saying, "Watch out for dictatorships," and sometimes it is separate from Kasumi Gaseki. And I don't know how to interpret this, but yeah, we know that if you have been here in Japan for a while, or you have studied Japanese politics and also administration, you are aware that a lot of stability in business, and of course, a lot of the slowness comes because of Kasumi Gaseki and how
Hmm.
Kasumi approaches policymaking and also how it works with the Kante and everything. But while it is slow, we all appreciate the stability, right? And the Japanese economy is what it is to a large extent, thanks to what Kasumi
Yeah,
Gaseki has done over the decades after the Second World
yeah.
War. Right. Okay. And then we're moving on to let's say international politics once again, and well, it's on the intersection with domestic. So Corey says, if the Strait of Hormuz disruption continues, what near-term economic steps might Japan need to consider?
Um, well, the first two that come to mind are energy and food. So, as you know, Japan is nowhere close to being self-sufficient. Am I still on?
You are, yes.
Okay. Nowhere close to being self-sufficient in energy production. Um, Renewables produce a small percentage. Nuclear is the next percentage that is produced, but the lion's share is coal, uh, petroleum, and LNG. Um, but like I said, there's 200 days of stockpiles. And I think if you watch what the United States did in Venezuela and how they're exercising their power, it is possible that this is a very quick and limited war, if I can call it that.
Mm-hmm.
We just don't want it to be a world conflagration, but it could be. There are a lot of pent up actions. There are a lot of unresolved things. Remember, Russia pointed out to Japan just this last week. You know, we've never signed a peace treaty, and there are no discussions going on about resolving that, guys. And that just came out of nowhere. And yes, it's true that the push towards returning the northern territories back to Japan as a basis for signing the peace treaty. Mr. Abe did that. He met with Putin maybe 27 or 28 times, gave him dogs, um, Akita dogs. They exchanged them. He gave them two puppies. Um, but that discussion has kind of gone by the wayside. It's strange that it would come up now that remember we don't have a peace treaty, guys. I don't know why that came up, but yes, um, we're hopeful that it's just very swift. It's decisive. I heard that it was a leadership takedown by the United States to get the Ayatollah. So you never know. The United States has grown to be pretty good at this sort of thing, but also pretty clumsy too. I mean, the forever wars that we've been involved in for such a long time. So it's just hard to say, and it's a new world, and the weapons are different now, and this geopolitical dance that's going on, Russia, the United States, and China. That's where the game is. It's not a multipolar world anymore. Um, so who knows how it's going to shake down? I don't want to be talking out of my lane.
Right. Okay. Thank you for this. And it looks like we have gone through the questions and comments for this week's episode. Yes, I can see how happy you are because You can go sailing now. All right. Well, once again, to everybody who watched us, thank you so very much for this. Thank you for the help and the support, for the comments and the questions, and sharing all your concerns and thoughts and well, everything. Please do remember to share these episodes, the briefings, with friends, colleagues, and acquaintances who might benefit from them, because they're free of charge. They're open to everybody to watch if they are interested in, and we appreciate them coming and you coming as well. Timothy, to you, thank you so very much for this time.
Thank you.
Again, I know that every time, every morning before you come on screen, you feel the butterflies and everything, the screen fever. So yeah,
Well,
thank you
the
so
the
much.
thing is, Maya, and I'm sure the audience appreciates this. This isn't what I do for a living. I'm not a broadcaster. I don't do news reports. This is something that I feel very passionate about, and after a career of doing it, I know a thing or two that I think everybody should know. So it's just that. But yeah, I have other things to do too. But this is a it's a passion for just bringing people up to speed on what's going on and how to predict. Japan is not an easy country to live in or to be successful at. It takes a certain blend of a lot of attributes. And if being familiar with what's going on in Japanese politics is part of your business, yeah, thank you very much for joining, and we appreciate you always tuning in. So we're always here. Maya, we've been doing this for 5+ years. We're into our sixth year now. So
We
um,
are,
it,
yes.
it's got some and we do it because the audience compels us and is enthusiastic about it and sometimes hit like.
Yeah, I could hear some bitterness there. So because it's sometimes right. Okay, to
Well,
end on
we know our audience exceeds 6,000 people. We've got a huge audience all over the world. So, you know.
yes, yes, that's true. And well, to end on a more beautiful and more uplifting note, remember that, well, the movie night of March is going to be, well, to take place actually on March 31st. That's the last Tuesday of the month. We hope to see you there again. And then, thank you very much indeed, Timothy.
Thank you, Maya.
Happy sailing.
Thank you. Yesterday was beautiful. Today is even more beautiful. So everybody get outside.
Again, stay on board.
Okay. Thank you, Maya.
Thank you.